This is Lesson 2 in the series, Why Not Be Rich? And it is entitled, Out Go the Blocks. Join us now for our lesson and our powerful prospering declarations. So let's start right at the top. Number 1, prosperity is spiritual, spirituality prospers. And let's just speak them right through, one right after the other. Okay. Prosperity is spiritual, spirituality prospers. Number 2, it is my Father's good pleasure to give me the kingdom of all good. 3, I am the rich child of a loving Father, so I dare to prosper now. Let's say that one again. I am the rich child of a loving Father, and I dare to prosper now. Number 4, God is the source of a mighty stream of substance. I am its channel of expression. Isn't that great? To be the channel of expression of God's good. Number 5 is, together, I am prepared for unlimited increase of good now. When? Now. When? Now. Okay. Number 6, prosperity is my spiritual right. I dare to prosper now. Now that finishes the ones that we said last week, so we're going to add a few for this week. Okay? Now this week we're working on release. So we need some affirmations to begin to release those things which are blocking the flow, of our good. The first one is, I quickly release all mental limitations, negative emotions, and physical accumulations that keep my good from me. I activate the free flow of my good now. Let's say that. I quickly release all mental limitations, negative emotions, and physical accumulations that keep my good from me. I activate the free flow of my good now. Good. Now that's the first one, and you want to feel that. You're going to release all mental limitations, release all negative emotions, and all physical accumulations that are keeping your good from you right now. And when you do that, you begin to activate the free flow of your good. Our next one is, I release and I let go. I am open to God's flow. I dare to prosper now. Let's say it. I release and I let go. I am open to God's flow. I dare to prosper now. Say it again. I release and I let go. I am open to God's flow. I dare to prosper now. Good. That sounds good. Now, the next one that we're going to say this morning has to do with forgiveness, because we cannot really flow until we freely and fully forgive and begin to love. So here's our statement. I freely and fully forgive and begin to love myself and others. Forgiving and loving attracts new, rich good into my life. Let's say it. I freely and fully forgive and begin to love myself and others. Forgiving and loving attracts new, rich good into my life. Got that idea? Let's say it again. I freely and fully forgive and begin to love myself and others. Forgiving and loving attracts new, rich good into my life. That's great. And our final affirmation is, I expect a miracle of God's rich abundance to manifest in my life now. Together, I expect a miracle of God's rich abundance to manifest in my life now. Again, I expect a miracle of God's rich abundance to manifest in my life now. And once more, I expect a miracle of God's rich abundance to manifest in my life now. When? 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 Now! Now you've got it. Okay. It is through the power of the spoken word that we do keep that consciousness of good growing in our lives, to become aware that we are surrounded by riches. It's very important to know this, because God has provided an abundant universe, a universe that surrounds us and that is so full to overflowing with good not only that which is manifested, but that which is yet to be manifest through our mind. Last week we talked about this idea of daring to be rich. Why not be rich? Why not draw all of the good of the universe forth into our life experience? This idea of being surrounded by riches is a great idea. Recently I read that the Smithsonian had determined that in the oceans around us there are $45 trillion worth of gold. And I'm sure at the present rate of $400 an ounce that figure has really gone sky high. But I don't think there's much comfort to anyone who is in the midst of that and who is seasick to know that they are rolling in gold, and that rolling in that gold is what's creating their seasickness. Well, we're going to talk about a sickness this morning, and we're going to talk about poverty. Poverty is a sickness of the mind. Just remember that. Poverty is a sickness of the mind. It is a mind that is sick, that is not whole and is not well, that is expressing poverty. Charles Fillmore also said that poverty is a sin. Poverty is a sin. Now, you all know what a sin is. A sin is falling short of the mark of perfection. In other words, you're not hitting the goal. It isn't something that's really a moral defect. It's just a mental transgression. It's a mental transgression. In other words, you are not aligning your mind with the mind of God. You are not bringing forth the good that you were intended to bring forth as a child of a rich father. So we really need to know that if we are not experiencing abundance, then we're falling short of the mark. And we were intended to be prosperous. We might look at poverty and at prosperity as two ends of a magnet. One that repels, the other that attracts. So think of that in that way. That poverty is a pole of a magnet which is repelling, which is putting all of the good that you really desire in your life away from you. It is blocking the flow of spirit. It is forcing things away that were intended to flow to you, through you, from within you, from that very spirit which prospers us all. Now, on the other hand, prosperity is a magnet, is the end of the magnet which attracts, which draws to us the good that we desire in our life. It is the end of the magnet which compels that which is provided for us by a prosperous Father, by a rich and loving Father, to come to us, through us, from within us. But all of us experience blocks. We experience blocks in consciousness, which I like to call refuse. Refuse can be pronounced two ways. It can be pronounced refuse, which is garbage, or that which you really don't want, that is the lesser good, or it can be pronounced refuse, R-E-F-U-S-E, that which refuses to let the Spirit of God flow through us, to bring our good to us. So we can really begin to look around us and find out that if we're not experiencing prosperity in the highest and the best, then we are refusing in our mental condition to allow the Spirit of God to flow through us and thereby prosper us. In Unity, we have two very important tools of consciousness conditioning, and we call those affirmations and denials. And a lot of people say, oh, I heard about those a long time ago. I know all about them. Well, if we really knew all about them and if we were really using them effectively, we would be prospering right now, because we would be eliminating, letting go, giving up, and releasing things, and affirming our prosperity, or making firm in mind the good that God has prepared for us. So we need to get back to the denial process, to the process of elimination. One of our faculties of mind is the faculty of elimination. And I think that Catherine Ponder said it this way when she said, if you put off elimination, you put off results. Just think about that. If you put off the elimination, the denial, the releasing process, then you put off results. So we need to take a look at what it is that's happening in our life. Our basic problem then, because we are not releasing, we are not letting go, is a problem of congestion. We have become congested. We are blocking the flow of spirit, and we need to set into motion the solution. And our basic solution to this problem of congestion is what? Circulation. Circulation, getting things moving again, getting things released, getting things out of the way, getting things so that they can be, so that we can activate this flow of spirit from within us. Now, the way that we can do this is a process of mental, emotional, and physical release, because there is a definite relationship between what we have accumulated in the outer and what we have accumulated in our mind or in our consciousness. So we really need to take a look at this and see that perhaps we can begin to free up ourselves by doing some things in the outer. We can begin to activate the inner cleansing by doing some outer cleansing. This morning we're going to start by looking at an activity which means cleansing the without. If you really want to begin to experience prosperity, you need to begin to release things in the without. One of the best ways that you can activate this is to begin to clean out your drawers at home and your closets. Clean out your drawers and closets. You know, if you would really look at what you've accumulated in your drawers and you think, oh my goodness, that's good, and you have accumulated it there, but you really don't use it anymore, you really don't need it anymore, and it has just become not accumulated good, but accumulated clutter. Okay? And very often in our mind, we are accumulating a lot of clutter, a lot of clutter. So when we begin to clean out our drawers, we begin to find those things which we have tucked away, which may be put to use right away, or which may be let go, need to be let go. So we all need to get to work and to clean out the drawers and the closets in our house. You know, when you do this, you might surprise yourself, because in that drawer, you might find some forgotten good, because a lot of us have put good away in drawers and have forgotten that it was there. I have a friend who was married not too long before this happened, and we were teaching this lesson on prosperity, and I said, you know, the first thing you ought to do is clean out the drawers. And she thought, well, nothing can happen to me. I've only been married about 3 or 4 months, so I couldn't possibly have accumulated anything that might be forgotten good in the drawers. But nevertheless, she went home and she began to clean out the drawers. And she went to this one specific drawer and she began to arrange it, clean it out, and she looked in the back, and in the back of the drawer she found some gift certificates that she had been given at her wedding. And because she didn't need them right now with all of the gifts that she had received, she began to put them to work right now. She had put them away, forgotten about them, and now she was able to put this forgotten good to work in her life. You need to clean out your closets regularly. You need to put things back into circulation. You know, a lot of us, when we look at our closets, we find that we have things that are good, but we've outgrown them. There's a lot of good that we've outgrown. Sometimes we have gotten too big for it, and we keep saying, well, I'll hold on to that until I lose 15 or 20 pounds. Or maybe the styles will come back. Maybe the style will come back again, and I better not let go of it because it's just too good. It's too good to not to hold on to. Well, Ernest Wilson, who's a favorite of mine when it comes to prosperity lessons, always said, if you haven't used something in the last year, unless it's a special purpose item, you ought to put it into circulation. You ought to put it back into circulation. To let it go and let it become somebody else's good. For your old good is someone's new good. Just think about that for a moment. Someone's new good. So think about the fact that if you want to put things into circulation, you are putting out your good, your old good, which immediately becomes someone's new good. And of course, you can involve yourself right there with something called the Great American Garage Sale. Everybody has been to a garage sale, and of course, you go and buy somebody's old good that becomes your new good, and now you have the opportunity to prepare for a garage sale of your own, to get rid of all of those things which are cluttering up your life. A dear friend of mine was doing just this, cleaning out her closets, and she found a package of material which had been given to her by some friends of hers many years before. Now, these friends had passed on, and she had had this material for a very long time on the shelf, and she was listening to this idea about cleaning out the shelves, cleaning out your closets, and she took down this material and decided, well, whatever I cannot use, I will put forth into circulation. But what I can use, I will begin to make things for myself. And so she had been speaking words of prosperity for some time, that she wanted to make a visit to Unity Village. She wanted to make a trip here, but she didn't know exactly how the funds were going to be forthcoming for this. And when she opened this material, she discovered within the folds of the material money. Money had been folded up in the material. Now, these friends had passed on many years before, and they were completely alone in the world. She had taken care of them for many years before they passed on, and she knew that there was no family. So she began to rejoice and give thanks for the good that was hers, because the good had come when she needed it, at the right time and in the right way. Another thing you can do that is very helpful as you begin to clean out the drawers, clean out the closets, and establish divine order is that you can imagine that you're releasing conditions and unwanted conditions in your life. Begin to let them go. Begin to release conditions in your life, excuse me, as you begin to let go of these outer things in your life, let go of some inner accumulation of thought. A lot of people, when I say to them, well, begin to clean up and clean out, begin to let go of all this accumulated good that you have in your life, then they all begin to get very concerned. They get concerned and they feel as though they're going to lose something if they let go. If they let go of this accumulation, then they feel that they are going to lose something, and they really become quite frightened. But there's an old Chinese proverb which says, you cannot lose that which belongs to you by right of consciousness, even if you throw it away. So there's no need for anxiety. And just think of that. As in mind, so in manifestation. If you have established a consciousness for good in your life, then even if you throw something away, that good will come back to you. You cannot lose it if you have the right of consciousness. Emmett Fox's little books, The Mental Equivalent, is a fine book to read on this idea of establishing a mental equivalent for that which you want to demonstrate in your life. Of course, once we get the closets and the drawers cleaned out, where do we want to go to? Let's go up to the attic. Let's go up to the attic. And there up in the attic, we find a lot of accumulation. Now, when we think of the attic, we think of up. You may not have an attic in your house, but you have an attic in your mind. You have an attic in your mind. It is your mind, and you have accumulated old concepts. Old concepts which are accumulated up there, old ideas which are no longer useful to you, or perhaps some which are useful, which you haven't put to work for a long time. So you need to take a look at the attic of your mind. And what you need to do is find out that with all that accumulation up there, you find a lot of old messages which relate to things which are blocking the flow of your good today. One of those messages that you might find up there is one that you might have heard as a child. Well, you only get one, so you better take care of it. And so you've been holding on to it for a very long time. You put it up in the attic, and you're not going to get another one. See, God only made one. God only made one, and if you don't take care of that one, there isn't going to be another one. That's as far from the truth as it can be. God created an abundant universe, and there are plenty, if we establish the consciousness for it. There's another one we might find up there, and that's a rainy day. Have you got a rainy day consciousness? Are you saving for a rainy day? If you're saving things for a rainy day, guess what's going to happen? A rainy day is going to come because you have established a consciousness for a rainy day, and sure enough, it's going to rain. It's going to rain the challenges and the problems that you have been saving for. How about the idea that money is evil? You know, money is evil? It isn't. It isn't at all, because it's a manifestation of God's substance. So how can that which is God be evil? How can money be evil? No, and they say that the love of money is the root of all evil. Why is it the root of all evil? Because when we love and become possessed by it, then we are taking an immature attitude. Remember, the word evil is immature. It means a not fully developed attitude toward God's good. So we are not manifesting good. We have an immature attitude toward it, and we begin to possess it. And when we hold on to it, and when we say it's mine, then we begin to mine to possess, mine to keep, instead of mine to use, mine to experience and to express. Then we begin to block the flow. We begin to hold on to it, and we don't grow and we don't prosper like we were intended to. There's another idea that came out of this whole idea, and that was the idea of the rich young ruler. The rich young ruler who was possessed by his possessions. He was possessed by his possessions, and he was so possessed by his possessions that there's a whole level of Christian thought that is held in bondage because they think that God did not intend us to be prosperous, because Jesus told the young man to give up everything. But he sure didn't tell the disciples to give up their fishing boats and all of the good that they had. They still had them all during their ministry with Jesus Christ. And that was a very prosperous business in those days, fishing. All he was trying to say to the rich young ruler was, don't be possessed by your possessions. I can remember my grandmother was a fairly well-to-do woman, and she didn't want anybody to know she had any money. She was so afraid that if anybody found out that she had any money, that they would think that she wasn't spiritual. And my grandmother was always doing things for everybody. She was a very, very religious and a very spiritual person. But do you know, she wanted to give a new organ to the church, but she was so afraid that people would think that she was being ostentatious and making a show of prosperity that she was afraid to do it. So finally she did it in secret, and the gift was well received. So when you go to your attic, sure enough, you may find some of these old concepts which you need to write out. Find out the messages which you have been holding in your consciousness. List those messages and begin to say, hey, you know, those are false concepts which have nothing to do with me now. And then throw it away. Get rid of it. You don't need that list anymore. But at the same time, as you go up in the attic of your mind, you may find some very beautiful memories, some very beautiful things like their family treasures, old thoughts of love that you may have had for someone that you haven't experienced or expressed for a long time. And you need to begin to express that. You need to begin to get it out of the attic where you've kept it for a long time and begin to express it. There's beautiful memories that are great and glorious. So put them to work. And maybe some hidden talents that need expressing. Some old ideas that you have put away and have not really brought forth into expression for a very long time. So revive these, bring these back into the fore again. Well, we've cleaned out the attic, and of course that leaves the basement, doesn't it? How much accumulation do you have down in your basement? Well, there's a little melody up there that says, "Where do I begin?" And sometimes that's just about how we feel when we go down to the basement, not only the basement of our house, but to the subconscious realm. Because the basement of the mind is the subconscious. The subconscious. That place where we're holding on to old hurts, to old offenses, to old fears, to old feelings of guilt. So we find down there hurts and resentments. We find down there fear. We find down there guilt. Guilt. All of these things which we have pushed down into the subconscious, these things which we have pushed down into the subconscious area of mind, and every time they want to come out and be gotten rid of, what do? We push them down again. We tuck them back in the corner. We put them in another box. We close them over in the corner there, and we don't look at them. We don't get rid of them. We don't eliminate them from our life. And because they're down there, they continue to do their work, keeping us from experiencing the good that we should be experiencing. Whenever I think about one of those, the fear, I think about the fear of poverty, and that fear of poverty does some very strange things to people. This friend of mine who lived next door her mother was a person who was always afraid that they were on their way to the poorhouse, And so what she did, she took all of the money that she could save and she put it in a tin can. And she took that tin can down to the basement and she buried it. Now, she didn't tell anybody for a long, long time that she had buried this tin can of money. And sure enough, when she began to reach that stage where she was getting ready to make her transition, what did she do? She called the family together and she says, "Now, I have all of this money which I have put away, and I have put it in the basement, and it's there for you." So they went down and they dug where she told them to dig, and guess what? The tin can had rotted, had rusted, and was no longer there, and the money had all become moldy to the extent that was no longer recognizable. Does that remind you of something that Jesus Christ said when he said, "Lay not up treasures on earth where moth and rust shall consume them, but lay up treasures in your mind. Lay up treasures in heaven, in the heaven of your mind, so that you can experience these things." So how do we handle the stuff that we find in the old subconscious? Well, let's have a forgiveness process. Forgiveness is the way to cleanse the subconscious. Write out everything that you can think of the old hurts, the old resentments, the old fear, the old guilt, and write it out and burn it. There is nothing like a good burning process, and that's the fire of spirit, which eliminates and releases all that is old and needs forgiving in your life. Charles Fillmore said that we should make a nightly practice before retiring to forgive ourselves and others for the offenses of the day. Have the basement cleaned out? Well, let's move to that garage. You know, our garage is where we keep our car. And our car is our freedom symbol, is our freedom. How we freely express our own creativity. So how your garage looks relates very much to the idea of freedom and creativity. You know, when we begin to feel not free, when we begin to feel that we are limited in any way, we begin to imagine that there is shortages of things. You know, we're imagining there's a shortage of gas for that freedom symbol right now. We have an imagined shortage. But in God, there is no shortage. It is just that we are not letting ourselves tap into the divine mind and bring forth the resource that will fuel all of the things that we need. So we need to realize that if we begin to see our good as limited, we begin to hold on to it. We begin to hoard. And we begin to get a sense of lack. A sense of lack. And remember that lack is a bottomless pit. It is so empty that we can pour good into it and it will never be filled. It will never be filled. So what we need to do is to know that lack is a bottomless pit which we cannot fill, and if we become miserly, we become miserable. Miser and miserable are out of the same root word. So if you are a miser, you become miserable. You begin to expect nothing out of life. You begin to expect that you're going to live in limitation, that you're not going to have the good that you desire. Ben Franklin said of this, "Blessed is he that expects nothing, for he shall not be disappointed." You really have to think about that, because if you are not expecting anything, you won't be disappointed. You're not going to get it. So we really need to do some cleansing. We need to make believers out of our subconscious mind. We need to free up that creative spirit within us. We need to make believers out of our subconscious, and the very best way that we can do this and begin is by beginning to make an effort in the outer. How long have you put off the cleansing? How long have you been putting off cleaning out the drawers, cleaning out the closets, cleaning out the attic, cleaning out the basement, cleaning out that garage, and freeing yourself up so that you can let the free flow of the activity of spirit move in and through you to bring that good that you desire? Of course, denials are always followed by affirmations. So once you've done any cleansing, you need to present a desire to be filled, a vessel to be filled. Always look at the needs and the desires of your life as vessels to be filled, and behold them being filled by the goodness of God. Look within yourself to the riches that God has prepared for you. Begin to see yourself prospered in every way. You begin to release those old conditions which are no longer profitable in your life. They were good at one time, but they no longer profit you. But now begin to image in your mind that which will enrich you. Begin to fill your mind with rich images, because you know that God's substance forms in your life according to the image you hold in your mind. So if you don't like what you are experiencing, you must change the image. You begin to list the things that you want. Begin to get a clear list of everything that you want to manifest in your life. Begin to affirm that those things that are coming to you mentally, physically, emotionally, and you can expect a miracle. What is a miracle? Is a miracle something that just happens, that God decides to go zot and bring you something out of the sky? No. A miracle is a higher working of the law of mind action or cause and effect. What constitutes a miracle? A miracle is when you let God become the cause. And then the effect is such rich good that is far beyond what you expect. So I want you all to expect a miracle of God's rich abundance to manifest in your life. When? Now. Good.